Hi, seventh grade. This is Miss Dohan again, and our goal today is to talk about drafting of the body paragraphs for this final essay about Tangerine and the choices and consequences of a character on Paul. Please make sure that you get out your copy of your outline so that you can take notes on it about our five targets for the day: topic sentences, background details, supporting evidence, commentary, and concluding sentences. So if you don't have your outline out, pause this video, get it out, and then press play. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about, and we've already went over this, is topic sentences. Remember that the purpose of a topic sentence is to introduce the main points of a paragraph. So only that section. Your topic sentence should include three things, and these three things are the character's name, the choice he or she made, and the big picture idea about the impact on Paul. So going back to my example, I'm focusing on Mrs. Fisher, and one of the choices that she made was to lie to Paul about his eyesight. And then the big picture idea on about the impact on Paul is that he is emotionally damaged. In other words, he hates himself. So this might be a good way for you to plan out all three parts of your topic sentence and then to generate it. So I'm going to use all this information and make sure I actually include it in my topic sentence. So I might have a topic sentence that might say, Mrs. Fisher's choice to lie to Paul about his eyesight causes him to hate himself. I'm double checking. I have the character's name, Mrs. Fisher. I have the choice that she makes to lie to Paul about his eyesight. And I have the last thing, the impact of that. So a little bit more about the do's and don'ts of topic sentences. When you're writing your topic sentences, thing that you should do, you want to look at your thesis statement. And you want to follow the order of the choices listed in your thesis statement. And we'll go over that. Well, actually, no, we'll go over it now. So you can see that my thesis statement is below, and you did your thesis statements over the weekend. So the first choice I have listed in my thesis statement is the not to tell Paul about his eyesight. So that should be the first topic sentence. In other words, that should be the first paragraph that I'm going to be talking about. The next choice that I have is Mrs. Fisher's choice to fill out an IEP for Lake Windsor Middle School. So that should be my second topic sentence. In other words, the topic of my second body paragraph. And lastly, I have the choice of Mrs. Fisher's choice to let Paul transfer without an IEP. And that should be the topic sentence of my final or third paragraph. So when you're creating your thesis statements and you're planning out the organization of your work, look at your thesis and make sure that your topic sentences follow that same order. Other do's for topic sentences. Do make sure you include all three parts. So the character, the choice, and the impact on Paul. And lastly, do use transition words to introduce the first, second, and third choice. So if you look kind of back at my examples, so we want to use transition words. In my first one, I don't have a transition words because that's the very first choice that I introduced. But in my second topic sentence, I use the word next, or maybe I'll use second or in addition to show this is another choice Mrs. Fisher is making. And for my last body paragraph, my last topic sentence, I have the transition lastly, or I can use finally, or the third choice Mrs. Fisher makes to again show how all of these kind of topic sentences are connected. Do nots when talking about topic sentences. Again, don't forget to look at your thesis to see which choice you should talk about first. Don't forget to include the impact on Paul in your topic sentence. This is what I noticed in a lot of the practice that we were doing. And lastly, Don't forget to use transitions in your topic sentence. If you want to take a break and just work on your topic sentences for right now, pause this video, and then we're going to continue on talking about background details in a second. Background details. Background details are going to be extremely important for this essay because you're writing to an audience that's never read Tangerine, so you're writing to an uninformed audience. Your background should include summarized events that lead up to the choice being made. So in other words, kind of like the who, what, when, where, why up to the choice. And it should explain any necessary information that the reader might be wondering about. For an example, an IEP. Well, what is that? It's an individualized education plan, and explain very briefly why it's needed in this story. A blackjack. Again, what is it? You can say like a blackjack, comma, a weapon, comma, just very quickly giving information to your reader. You can look at the background as another way of kind of using TLQ. So in other words, it's like an extended or a super long L or lead-in. So this gives your audience all the necessary info to understand what's happening in your quote. And remember, our quotes are the supporting details that prove the impact on Paul. So some information and some do's and don'ts about background details, and bear with me on this because there's a few of them. So do's for background. Do just first ask yourself, what information does my audience need to know about the people or events leading up to this choice? So who's involved in the choice? What's happening beforehand? Why do they make the choice? All of those are important to include. Do keep your background focused on the topic, the choice and the impact on Paul as much as possible. This is not a time to just include every sort of summary detail and everything that happens in the novel. Keep it focused. Do explain what causes the choice to be made. In other words, this means summarizing the events before the choice and the actual choice itself. And second to last, if you introduce characters outside of Paul's immediate family, especially if they're involved in the choice or the consequence, explain who they are in relation to Paul. So I know a lot of you are choosing Eric's choice to have Luis, for lack of better words, killed. You'll need to explain who Luis Cruz is. And don't be nervous if you find yourself including a lot of, like, a couple sentences of background. That's okay. And in a second, I'm going to show you some of a paragraph that I wrote that has a lot of background detail. So do nots when we're talking about background. Don't just try to include everything in the background. Remember to keep it really focused on the topic. Others do nots. Don't go off topic. Again, keep it tight, keep it focused. Don't use direct quotes for your background. Not needed. Do not forget to explain who characters are in relation to the choice and the impact. And that's it for do nots. So just to give you guys a little bit of, like, to calm your nerves, I wrote 2 sample paragraphs. The top one is about Eric's choice to attack Luis and how that impacts Paul. And the bottom one is about Mrs. Fisher's choice to not tell Paul about his eyesight and the impact of that. So I have color-coded mine so that the topic sentence is in red and the background's in blue and so on. And I just wanted to give you kind of a visual of how much background that it's important to include. So you'll notice that the majority of my paragraph is background, and that is okay. All right, moving on. Next we have supporting details, and I'm going to go over this quickly since we've already gone over these in big depth. So the purpose of the detail is to prove that this person's choice has had an impact, this type of impact on Paul. This should be explicit evidence. And the questions that we've already kind of used to evaluate this evidence, does it relate to blank's choice? And does the detail show how Paul is impacted? So if you're still wondering, I'm not sure if my evidence meet these requirements, see Miss Dohan or Mrs. Pollock, so we can really hammer out your evidence. The next thing we're going to talk about is commentary. The goal of commentary is explaining and interpreting the evidence. So this is where we explain how the detail shows or proves that Paul is impacted in this particular way. Some do's and don'ts for commentary. Do include it either before or after your evidence. So you can have your commentary either before or after. That's fine. You just need to be able to interpret the evidence. You can absolutely, another do is to use sentence starters. These will help you make sure that you include commentary. So I've listed 4 for you. This shows blank because, the old favorite. This connects to blank because. This proves blank because. Paul's words or actions or thoughts reveal blank because. Notice that all of these have a because phrase to make sure that you are fully explaining your ideas. So you're really explaining how whatever quote you just chose shows that Paul's impacted emotionally, or his friendships are impacted, or so on and so forth. Do nots about commentary. Don't forget it. Really important. Also, don't repeat yourself. If you've decided to put your commentary before the evidence, then it's done before. Don't put it after just to repeat yourself. Okay, so check. Do I explain my ideas? Yes. Moving on. The last thing that we're going to be talking about today for body paragraphs is our concluding sentences. And the purpose of concluding sentences is to bring your ideas to a smooth close. So just some do's and don'ts about this. You can use ending transition words. I've included a list of ending transition words on the following page, and we'll get there in a second. Use those to start off your concluding sentence, to show to your reader, like, hey, I'm wrapping it up over here. Do use some of the keywords for your topic sentence. That doesn't mean use the entire topic sentence exactly as is. So some keywords you might have are the character's name, Paul's name, and maybe the type of impact or something like that. Do, again, remind your reader of the big picture ideas from this paragraph. Do nots, and these are pretty simple. Don't forget to include the concluding sentence. Don't use the exact same order or wording, or don't just switch the order. And last, don't use phrases like these. And these I want you to make sure that you pay attention and check your work for. Do not use phrases like, I just proved Mrs. Fisher had an impact on Paul, or that's how Mrs. Fisher's choice to blank impacts Paul. Take the time to use some of the transition words, select some of the ideas, and remind the readers of big picture ideas in a new way. So to help you with concluding sentences, here are some helpful words or phrases that show kind of that you're wrapping it up. Some ones that I particularly like are like in conclusion, to sum up, therefore, or even, let's see, all in all together, consequently, like consequently, Mrs. Fisher's choice to blank has a deep impact on Paul's blank. I hope that this helped you figure out kind of and break down all of the parts of a paragraph, and good luck on your drafting today.